Protect yourself at all times from malicious attacks. Expect a heated debate and valuable insights on how to protect your website at all times from hackers and DDoS attacks. Speakers: Rodrigo Marcos, Principal Consultant, SecForce; Alex Sakota, Founder, High Creative, Growth Hacker; Anton Christina, CEO, CSL; Julian Lehmann, Managing Director, Leaseweb; Gary R. Beal, Managing Director, Vanguard Online Media, Moderator.
Check, check.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're getting ready to begin. We're pretty tight on schedule, so we're just going to go ahead and jump into it and let them funnel in. This is basically, as it says, protect yourself at all times against malicious attacks. We have my esteemed colleagues as members. They do everything from pen testing to hacking.
Thank you, guys.
One individual in particular hacks iGaming sites, so I think we could get some really good information from him. But if you could go through, well, I think the introductions are on screen, so let's not waste the time with that. Let's just hop right into it. And I guess the question I posed to the panel is, what are some of the trends that you see, some of the new hacks? Because, obviously we have the DDoS, we have rats, we have all the things that we see in the movies. What are you seeing that's being used most recently that you're finding in your pen testing?
I believe you are the best to take this question as a penetration specialist. I assume you experience these things more often.
Yes. We do penetration testing of iGaming platforms, and we've seen an evolution on the sophistication of attacks, whereby back in the day the main threat actor was a teenager in his room performing some level of attacks. We see that now there's even organized crime and organizations basically using iGaming platforms to... all right, thank you. So we see that there is an evolution on the sophistication of attacks, and now there's...
Shouldn't.
Wouldn't be an internet conference without it.
Performing the more sophisticated attacks against these platforms.
And if you hear me?
Okay, next.
Yeah.
Mark, you want to?
Okay, you hear me? Yes? You're the pro of the presentation. I've seen that before, so thank you. So first, hello. I thank you very much for being here. I'm working for Leaseweb, and I'm doing the opposite of your job, actually. I'm protecting, I'm defending sites. And we have about 15,000 customers around the globe. We are managing about 80,000 servers in US, Europe, and Asia. And in terms of trends, it's clear. It's very clear that the main trend is the most sophisticated attack. I would say that the second big trend is that the threat is constant. Even if you think that you are not under attack, you are actually scanned. And we see a lot of scanning activity. Servers are constantly scanned for vulnerability. So this is a constant threat that is on the servers. And that's why we provide upgrading services and making sure that the patch are always deployed on the servers. The third big trend is that even though it's more sophisticated, it's actually easier than ever to implement an attack against a site. You can Google it, you can invest $50, and if you have an upset employee who is leaving your company or a competitor who's really willing to take your site down, very easily you can find online tools. I remember very well for the Olympic Games last year, there were plenty of tools anti-Olympic Games website. So you could Google, I want to take the Olympic Games site down, and you had an application that you can install on your desktop and then put some money and put the site down, or try at least. But you see as well that the last trend, so sophisticated, easy, constant, and everyone is targeted. Of course, you think now here we are in the iGaming company, there is a lot of revenue generated online, and it's one of the sectors that is indeed under attack. But if you think of it, all the sectors in the market, all the online activities are under threat of those attacks, because basically all the guys that were attacking the real world are now shifting their activity online, exactly as we do, and they perform the attack for every kind of companies in all sectors, airline, iGaming, finance, but even industries. Everyone is actually facing this.
Okay, great.
If I may add to that, normally there is a linear trend of the reward for an attacker and the targets of an attacker. So if an attacker sees a clear reward on, say, for example, attacking iGaming platforms, they would actually swift their targets and start targeting iGaming platforms. And that's exactly what we've been seeing.
Yeah,
Okay.
So let me just add to this. What is the biggest threat, in my opinion, is within your company. Your employees, you can put the technology in place, you can do whatever you like, put the most sophisticated tool, but it's very hard to protect yourself within the organization. So sometimes what happens with IT departments is they will limit the feature. I won't be able to see the list of customers, I won't be able to use this, that, and then I'm not able to do my job in full, right? So there are other ways how we can go around it as well. Limit the data that you are showing to your employees. Don't show the full list, don't show full search results, but limit the number of results that is shown. If they need to see the full log file or something, they will need approval from their line manager or their superior, so they won't depend everything on one man. I had an experience where we had data stolen from the IT director, who is an admin, and we put all the tools in place, but that didn't help. So this is something I think that it's more scary than other methods that hackers are using.
Great, and I'll introduce Mark Leslie real quick. He's not in the panel, he's replacing somebody. He's out at UTalk booth. Mark?
Yeah, I was going to concur with that.
You grab your microphone.
No? All right. So I'll concur with that statement. There was something that I was introduced to in 2015 called social engineering. And you can go Google that, look that up. That's exactly along the lines of what you're saying. And it may not be a malicious employee intentionally trying to do something to harm you too. It could be, you know, someone found out that this employee works for that organization, and I've actually seen some crazy stuff where it's like the guy poses on social media, he logs in with this fake hot girl and connects with the guy. Of course, the girl's smoking hot, he connects with her. Says, oh, I got another picture here. The guy saves it to his desktop. Done. He's got access to the machine. He's on the desktop. It's done. Full access, everything. That was social engineering, and that's what I see taking off.
Yeah, there are situations where even, let's say, employee might be trustworthy and everything, but their partner might be working in a competitive company, and yeah, they will have access if they take the laptop home, and their partner will be able to access all the backend data and so on. Although you implement VPN and these things, yeah, it's very hard to protect from these kind of cases.
A good book along those lines, if you want to check it out, along protecting data within your organization.
Right.
It's called The Spy That Couldn't Spell. And there was it happened like 2000, 2001. There was a U.S., not NSA, but he took a lot of data home. And they really went through in the book. They explained how they protect individual data. Like if you download data if you work at the U.S. government, if you download anything, you take anything, there's an identifier that says this is from you. They know who's got whatever document they've got at any time now. So if you're working for the government and think you're doing something bad, I would be doing that now.
Okay, great. My next question I'll pose to all of the panel members. You know, short of picks off on your server, and maybe Cloudflare or WordFence. I have a lot of affiliates I talk to that their platform is sitting on WordPress. I'm actually going to teach some people in the next session how to hack WordPress because I want them to know how to prevent it. But I'm very curious to hear from the experts outside of WordFence, which I'm sure you all know, we can get past that very easily, and Cloudflare, which is a little more difficult, but it's not impenetrable. Would you recommend anything besides those tools? And what's your favorite?
So maybe I can start with that, yeah, and then of course I'll be glad if you can challenge it because you probably have many ways to challenge it.
In short of hiring you guys.
No, I think it's very interesting because here we are the defensive and the offensive side.
Yes.
So it's very good to have that contrast here.
So what we see is, of course, my company is 20 years old. So we are managing all these servers, thousands of servers around the world for many years now. And we see clearly at the beginning, it was human traffic trying to get the site down with layer 2, layer 3 attacks. Then it moved to non-human traffic trying to take the site down. So bot, network, Mirai bot, trying to go all to a website to bring it down. And for this, you need to have a solution that is close to your infrastructure, that is able to identify the traffic and say, well, this traffic is not the usual traffic I'm getting. There is probably something wrong there. Let me take it aside, inspect it a bit further, and then if it's correct, then I let it in. And now the new trend is that the non-human traffic, those bots, are not just trying in a dumb manner to bring your site down. They are much smarter than they ever were before.
Yep.
And we see example of sites of bots actually faking the reservation of a plane ticket. So a bot will reserve all the tickets, all the seats on a plane so that the plane appears full and all the next guys who wants to have a plane ticket, they have to go to competition to buy this ticket. So we see other examples where bots are playing poker. They are able to play a game in order to favor another person that is on the table. So they take all the seats on the table and they let only one guy win, which is the one who is actually controlling.
And they're all sitting in the same room.
And we need, for this, to fight this kind of attack, we don't need close to the infrastructure defensive method. We need to have defensive method at the edge, which is the principle of Cloudflare, having edge servers that are not only able to cache the content with CDN, Leaseweb as well is providing CDN services, but as well being able to inspect the traffic close to the end user and verify and do deep packet inspection to verify if this request is really either a human or a good bot, because there are plenty of good bots as well. Think of all the scrubber and things like that. So either human or good bot, and then we inspect it thoroughly, and then if it's a genuine request, then we let it go to the origin server. And we need to deploy all these servers. This is what we are doing now. We deploy servers at the edge of the network everywhere, in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in order to inspect the traffic at the edge before the request arrives at the origin server. And then a typical way, of course, Cloudflare is not 100% sure. It's a cat and mouse story. You lock the door and they go by the window. You lock the window and then they go by the chimney. And then this is
multiple port attacks.
And that's why at the edge we are developing now tools to automate the inspection, to do artificial intelligence, to detect really strange pattern and really optimize the defense and identify very early on the way the requests are. One last thing that is really interesting is a lot of sites are not anymore websites. They are web applications, they are mobile applications. And mobile applications are using APIs to do all the requests to get the data. And we see now malicious API requests. It's very interesting. You know, you think you're developing all these APIs. We are trying to do everything based on open APIs, give access to API to everyone. And now those guys are now developing tools to use those APIs to extract data, to put your site down, to steal your data. That's very interesting.
Probably some of those requests were mine.
Exactly. Well.
Yeah, my point again would be, I think you have to go from basics. The simple password from your employee, if it's the next 1, 2, 3, 4, and can be caught and somebody gets hold of it, they got hold of your network. So you can have all these automated tools, you can have all these fancy tools. There is no tool 100% is going to close everything. So this subject, security, we can stay more than another 40 minutes and 30 seconds and never be bored of talking about it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting subject. So, yeah.
Okay.
So from our perspective, from the attacking perspective, you described quite a few attacks and solutions to attacks. So yeah, it's very true that this is a cat and mouse scenario where we try to identify attacks and bypass security protections. We discussed things from the network layer perspective, like Cloudflare, and indeed there's techniques to bypass that, where we can, or an attacker can generate traffic very similar to what it would look like a legitimate traffic, okay? There's many other security mechanisms, and again, this is again a cat and mouse scenario. So you mentioned that in certain scenarios, we can leverage an attack to be placed in a, let's say, advantage position towards the rest of the players. So, for example, in poker games, where precisely you can sit on the same table with someone else and then try to communicate and win on that table. So there's security mechanisms to prevent this, like, for example, randomization. So there's a number of tables and you cannot choose where to sit. But again, there's security vulnerabilities whereby an attacker can force those situations. So basically, bottom line is that security is not handled only on one layer. It's not only on the network perspective, it's not the infrastructure perspective, it's not the application perspective. It's a combination of all of them, and a thorough testing of all of those layers would make a platform secure, basically.
Two things. So first, when NoSQL came out, which is NoSQL is the basic platform of cloud computing. Those of you that don't know, it's called NoSQL, NoSQL. When that came out, I saw the structure, you know, companies like Cassandra and stuff like that. They had these seminars in San Francisco. And I saw it was pretty cool. It showed how fast the database was and how the data was all sharded and whatnot. And I said, wait a minute, what about security? And they're all like, no, 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 we're super secure. I'm like, no. I looked at the way it was structured. I go, nah. The only thing you're going to put on cloud computing are images, things that are not, like no passwords, nothing's going to go out on cloud computing. If I was to do that, I'm like, that, all the stuff that doesn't matter, images, basic stuff, things that take up large amounts of data, that's going on the cloud. Secure servers are going to have the secure data. And another advice that I give to you, a lot of people don't do this. When my coder first developed an app for me, when I first hired him, I'm like, okay, where's the admin page? Well, it's in the admin directory. Where's the admin directory? .com/admin. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, that is the first thing a hacker is going to try and do.
Yep.
So I'm like, no, no, no. Make an admin directory, keep it there, but the real admin directory is going to be called error log or something stupid, like, you know, whatever, some random set of numbers and letters. That's the first thing you could do. That's a major source of security. Okay? Change your admin directory to something else. The second is keep the admin directory. Do something that very few people do in the security business. Sandbox. They rarely use this term. It's used once in a while. Sandbox. What is a sandbox? It's real easy. I copied the entire server. I put it on another server. I get rid of whatever's sensitive, or I change it or whatever. And when you go to my admin directory, the fake one, you're now going to another server, which is a fake server, which looks exactly like the real server. And if you hack in, if you do hack into that, you got nothing. You think you got something, but you never got anything. And that's sandboxing in essence. I did have a question for you. Actually, interesting. You mentioned that in poker, if you can hack through the chat, like let's say there's a poker game going on, and you can hack through the chat. If you hack through the chat, you can then see all the players' cards, or you can't. That's interesting.
So, no, I didn't mention anything about hacking through the chat.
He's not a hacker.
To start with. Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely, if you think about it, a poker game, or to that matter, any gaming platform, is just a piece of code that runs on a server. And as such, there might be vulnerabilities. It might be a vulnerability on the chat. It would be a vulnerability elsewhere, okay? And we are talking about SQL injection vulnerabilities, etc., etc. And precisely, an attacker can get an advantage and exploit those vulnerabilities, normally with different motivations, which could be committing fraud within the system, etc., etc., etc. We were talking about API calls, and again, that's one key entry point for an attackers where you can exploit certain functionality on APIs to precisely gain some kind of unauthorized access, etc., etc.
Okay, guys, we got 9 minutes left. I want to get one question in here. So, and everybody give a quick answer if you can. You mentioned cat and mouse. So as soon as we fix it, it's broke. As soon as we fix it, they find a different way. That's what me and you and pen testing and all of us pretty much know it. So my question to you is, I want to know what is up and coming. I want to know, what are they working on right now with these quantum computers that can crack 128-bit and even 256. NSA won't even use the 256-bit encryption because it is hackable. When this quantum goes, not necessarily public, but you know the big companies can buy it, then what are we going to do? What do you see coming down the pike is the next best strategy or next best tool in production that we'll be able to look forward to using?
Brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So what we are working on, if you think of Cloudflare, the free option of Cloudflare, which everyone is using, is pretty much one button, on, off. You know, it's either on or either off, which is giving you the impression you're safe without really being safe, because there are plenty of scenarios that are either not taken in account, or you might be blocking legitimate traffic. So what we have to do, and we do this continuously, is ensure that we can really personalize the attack and be providing a managed services. So we're now moving away from just providing servers and colocation to providing a real managed service where we configure the service with more than 400 rules, and in the future we'll probably have 600, 700, and we need more and more smart guys in order to analyze the traffic and really fine-tune the protection to let go the genuine traffic and block the malicious one. And it's taking more and more effort from the team.
It's very good advice. Networking. Talk to people here.
And what we do is, those people are very expensive. You know, security guys are, man, I wish we could all have their salaries. So what we do is recruit them and then provide economies of scale by providing their skills to as many customers as possible, so that you don't have to recruit those guys.
Excellent. Mr. Hacker?
So I would say two things in terms of attacks in the future. I would say one in the near future and one far in the distance. So the first one is a shift towards social engineering attacks and phishing attacks. The sophistication of phishing attacks at the moment is increasing, whereby basically a malicious email is sent to someone, and whereby the antivirus can be bypassed, the email filtering can be bypassed, execution on the system and different controls can be bypassed, and we are finding a trend where malicious attackers can chain an attack to not target infrastructure, but the people in organizations, and then move laterally to go to payment systems, etc., etc. So that's the first thing that we are already seeing. And the second one, you mentioned quantum computing, which I think is a fascinating topic. All the cryptography in the world at this very moment is based on the computing power which is accessible for us, okay? Us, normal users, and governments, okay? So governments can access a lot of computational power, but still cannot break robust encryption mechanisms. And by this, I mean encryption on email, encryption on communications between a web client and a server, etc., etc. So preserving confidentiality, etc., etc. Quantum computing is changing everything. With the computational power which will be accessible in the near future, all the cryptographic mechanisms will need to be rethink, okay? And we will need to provide new infrastructure and new ideas to have basically a stronger algorithms. And that's a threat which is happening like in the near future.
Yeah, I see it causing a lot of problems in the Bitcoin industry because, I mean,
as well, yeah.
It's just bound to happen. It's not if, it's when. You want to take the last few minutes?
Yeah, I would say, for regarding future attacks, still don't forget the basics. Do the basics, as my colleague said. It's increasing. Hackers are trying to get into your employees' workstations and then penetrate the attack from there. So don't forget the basics. Make sure that your passwords are secured. Rather than leaving up to users that they can change password themselves. So make sure you have policy in place. You can put whatever you want in place. 3 years ago, UK National Secret Service got hacked by 16 years old. I believe UK National Security has, let's say, 90% better security than most of the companies here, right? So you can do all these things and so on, but where they failed is they failed in basics. So don't forget the basics. Whatever you do, don't forget the basics.
Yeah, and I'll reemphasize that. You know, everybody who's using one password for multiple websites, or, you know, I think most of your IT guys are smart enough to not do that, but if you're just a novice, if you're an affiliate, what I recommend is using, and these are hackable too, but they're a little bit more safe than the rest, say RoboForm or LastPass. It'll automatically generate a predetermined code, whether you want 9 digits, 15 digits, whatever. I mean, that's the least amount of headache to use the right password and not just keep duplicating it, because that's one thing that I hit on hard is brute force attacks on WordPress. Jesus, it is so easy. Like you were saying, admin, password 1, God, you know, use, say, as I mentioned, RoboForm or LastPass or some sort of encryption. I wrote an article for the SiGMA magazine that talks about email encryption as well. It's 1 page, quick read. Use that in any circumstances. I don't care if you're sending your mother an email. You can't turn on TV or look on the net these days without this net neutrality crap going on. Well, I'm an advocate of it. I'm all for it. I give away all these free hacking tools because I want you to know how they work and how you can prevent them. These guys are the professionals, though. These are the guys that can prevent people like some of us from doing that. And now, these days, you have groups of people. I mean, you have, I think didn't Google and MSN, or one of them, pay a 4- and a 7-year-old a bird dog fee for finding a hack? Some kid hacked into one of the games, and yeah, so you got hackers coming up now that, you know, the whole game is going to completely change between the quantum processors and all of the fresh faces that are coming into this industry. Gaming people need to be really, really, really scared, and affiliates even as much as, say, your operators or your vendors.
Yeah, very important. When you're putting the password and so on, I had an experience myself. I think it was about a couple of years ago. Google AdWords, we saw the fake ad with the fake address. They used the Google AdWords, the trademark. Google AdWords missed that. And basically people thought when they click on it, they're going to go and log in their AdWords account. However, it was a hacker's website, and that collected all the username and passwords for people that were fooled. So Google is not perfect like themselves. You know, you make sure that you think twice before you put the password. Is the URL correct? Is this the domain? Be careful. They do many subdomains to try to fool the people and so on.
I got an interesting challenge for you, or both of you. Take a modern computer, like a gaming computer, something really powerful, and then network it with like a Commodore 64, like one of those really old machines. if you can make it the Commodore 64 is solid, can't be hacked, then that's quantum. That's because then the modern computer is the equivalent of the quantum computer compared to the Commodore 64, today's computer. That would be an interesting challenge for you. If you can make that solid, then you're okay with quantum.
Okay, great.
And
Well, let's.
When,
I think we have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just recently wrote a blog about the 3 best way to protect your server. Have a read, you know, it's on leaseweb.com, and then you'll see some advice that are very simple as well on how to protect your servers.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you can chase any one of these guys down, email them, or contact them through SiGMA, and they'll answer your questions, as most of us will. And great job, guys. Good information. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.